everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to take a look at expanding on the previous video we did around bash shell scripting. So in the last video we covered topics such as arrays, functions, while loops, conditional statements, if conditional statements, maybe a couple of other things. Today we're not really going to learn a whole lot new, maybe a couple of things, but in general we're going to kind of go over the stuff that we've learned and try to build on that knowledge and try and kind of, remember it all better. Learning by doing, that's what I say. So in the last video we created a script around a task manager, a very basic task manager. Today we're just going to look at something different. We're going to look at a file sorter. So we've got this directory here called files, and inside files we've got lots of files. We've got zip files and JPEGs and GIFs and PDFs and documents and RAR files and all sorts of files. And we're going to create a script that will sort all of these files into different folders. So the folders will be images, documents, and archives. And the script should go through each of the files, look at the extension, and based on what the extension is, dump it into a suitable directory. Also, if the directories do not exist, it's going to create those directories. So yeah, let's get into it and see how we get on. So we'll call it file sorter.bsh, and as usual we're going to do a hash bing bash, and we're going to exit this. So vi or vim kind of, once you exit it and re-enter it, then vim will recognize that you're working on a shell script. And we're going to have three functions here. We're going to have a function called create direct_dir. This function will create a directory if it doesn't exist. Okay, and then our next function is going to be organize files function, and this is going to be the main function that does most of the heavy lifting for our script. So the second function is to organize the files. This will pretty much go through our directory, analyze each file extension. Based on that extension, then we'll dump that file into another directory. So we'll have directories for images, documents, and archives. And then finally, our last function will be just called main. This will be where we will run our program from. So right at the end, we'll just type in main. Just to keep something in these, I'm just going to run an echo. I'm going to run an echo. Actually, in this one I might just do an echo $1 because I can show you something later on. All right, so in the main function, we're going to do a few things. Okay, so we're going to first of all print out the name of our what our script is and what it does. So echo file organizer script. Okay, and then we're going to do a read -p. So read, as remember from the last script, read pretty much asks the user to input something. The -p pretty much means prompt. So what I type next will be the prompt that you will see when you're asked for the data. Okay, so we will say enter dir directory, and then we will have to put the directory that the customer is going to put in here to a variable, and let's call that variable target dir. Okay, now we need to put in some checking. We need to make sure that the directory exists. So if we do an if and we use a -d, that means is it a directory, does it exist? And then we do target dir. So is this a directory? Does it exist? Then we will run our module organize files. Sorry, we will run our function against it, and then we will also add in the name of our target dir. So once this is run, once the conditional statement checks, so check if this directory exists. If it does exist, then run this command. This command is this organize files function. So we run the organize files function against this variable, which is the target dir that we input earlier on. And okay, we can actually put in an else statement here. let's say else echo dir does not exist. Okay. All right, I think we're good. Yeah, we have to close it off. Phi. So we have our if statement. If directory exists, else do this, and then close it off. Okay. So let's test it out. What should happen here is we put our directory into the input, and then as a target dir, and then we run this organize file, and this will just print the name of the directory that we put in. So let's give it a go. Okay, so dash file sorter. Okay, enter directory files. Okay, so it just prints it back out. But what if we enter a directory that doesn't exist? It does not exist. Okay, so that's great. That means our functionality is working as expected. So the next thing we want to do is we want to do the create directory. So create directory function will create a directory if it doesn't exist. So the organize files will create multiple directories and put files into them. But if those directories don't exist, then it needs to create one. So let's change this. Okay, so we'll do local dir equals $1. So what does this do? So we take this, so we create a new variable called dir, but it's local. It means it's local to this function. It won't work outside of this function. Okay. Then we take the argument, the first argument that is being presented to this function as it's created. And if we go down to where it's run from, organize files, we see that the argument is the target directory. So we create a variable called local directory. Then we just check to make sure it's there. So if it's not -d, dir, then dir. So what does this part do here? So this is an if statement. Now if has a lot of options, and you can go into the man page for bash, and you can look up if, and you'll see lots of different options for if. You've got -d, -f, blah, blah, blah. -d is a directory. And does it exist? So this means if not. So let's read it in English. If not a directory, then on to the next line, make the directory. And then do echo created dir and then maybe $dir. Close it. And we can then close it. Okay. So if the directory does exist, nothing happens. There's no else statement or if else statement. So that's it. We're done. We're done with this. We're done with this. Now, let's just make sure it just still runs, doesn't cause any gobbledygook. Files. Okay, so it looks good. Okay, so now we got to do our organized files section. This is going to be the longest section, and to be honest, I don't think you really want to see me type and make a lot of errors here. So I'm going to use a little tool that I have called AU auto type, and then I've got a directory called prep, and it's going to type in all of my code here for me, so I don't have to type it. I'll go through all this one at a time once it's finished. This is a really cool plugin for Vim. Okay, done. So what have we got here? So in the organize files function, we've got the same thing. We've got the same thing with this variable. We create a local variable called dir that takes the input. Then we've got a bunch of arrays. One array, say, is for images, and it's got all the file extension types. And one's for docs, it's got the file extension types, and one is for archives, it's got the file extension types. Then we're back to a while. If you remember while from the last video we did, so a while loop will keep doing something until a condition is met. And the condition here, it's a little bit tricky, but it's definitely worth spending some time researching this one. So while read -r file. So this is telling the while loop to read something, okay? And what is it telling it to read? It's telling it to read some input. And the input is going to be a file. So what we need to look at here is while read -r, and then assign whatever it is to file, okay? Now, if we go down to the end of the read statement, we see done. So usually it's a while, blah, 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 condition, and then done. But this time it's a bit different. This time we've got this less than sign, and the less than sign is telling us basically to read in what comes next. Now typically with a while loop you would use a file. So you would say while read file, blah, 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 blah. But in this case we don't have a file because we don't know what the names of all of the files are in the directory. So we use this command here, a find command, to go through our directory, maximum depth 1. So just basically look at the top level of the directory and find all files type F and return them. Now you can't just return it's not like a pipe, you can't return a list of commands or a list of files into this while loop like this. So you've got this little thing here, right? So this is an indicator to the bash shell that pretend what's next, pretend what's inside these curly brackets is a file, okay? So basically it returns a file to the while loop. As far as the while loop is concerned, it's a file, but really it's just trickery that the bash shell does, okay? So there is a name on this. It's called a process substitution that treats the output of a command as a file. So spend some time looking this up. It's these kinds of tricks that makes Linux really powerful, these kind of weird, quirky things. So definitely look this one up, as it's called a process substitution. Okay, so inside our while loop, then what have we got? We've got an if statement here, right? So if the file, which is coming from here, so it iterates through every single file that's returned from this command. So if file, then, so if this is true, if it is a file, then the extension of this file is got from this command. So you echo the variable file, which would be like the full path to the file plus the extension. Then you're reversing the file name, which is quite interesting because you say it's called, say the directory is /files/test.exe. It's actually reversing it, so it will be exe dot blah blah blah. Then you cut -d. So cut basically takes the input and based on a delimiter, which in this case is a full stop, it prints out the first field. So because we've reversed the name of the file, then you're always going to have the extension and then the dot, which is going to be the delimiter here. So it's going to just print what comes before the dot. And then again, we reverse it. So at the end of this, you should have the extension. Now we have our extension. So the next thing we're going to check if our extension matches anything. So we use multiple if statements to check the arrays for images, docs, and archives to see if there's a match. And if there's a match, then it will attempt to move the images into the images directory. It will do the same for docs, it will do the same for archives as well. And I believe that's pretty much it for the whole script. I think I've explained everything. Let's just run it and see how we get. Okay, so let's run our file sorter. Sorry, bash file sorter dot. Then we will enter the files. And then we cd into the files directory, and you can see it's already sorted everything. We can use the tree command then just to take a look at each directory. So we've got arch, we've got all the zips, the rars, the tars in here, and in the docs, we've got the docs, the PDFs, then the text documents all in here. In the images, we've got the GIFs, the JPEGs, and the PNGs all in here. So yeah, it works. The script works quite well. It's quite complicated. I would definitely recommend that you take a look over at my GitHub page, which has the code in it. I'll leave the link below and spend some time going through it, see if you can understand it. But it's worth learning. I mean, if you're planning on working in any kind of technology, these are the skills that give you the advantage over most people. So my name is Tom Kraz. I hope you got some value out of this. Please like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you all later.